I walked into my wife's party, holding her lover's wife's hand. The room fell into an unnatural silence the moment I stepped through the grand double doors of the Sterling Hotel's ballroom. Conversations died mid-sentence, glasses paused halfway to lips, and even the soft hum of the grand piano in the corner suddenly felt deafening. All eyes were on me, and on the woman standing beside me. I kept my grip firm on her hand, a silent show of unity. The delicate scent of her perfume drifted between us, a stark contrast to the storm that was about to unfold. Then I saw her. Emma, my wife. She stood near the center of the room, a delicate champagne flute in hand, her lips parting in what I knew was the beginning of some cheerful greeting. Until her eyes met mine. The blood drained from her face so fast I thought she might collapse. She blinked rapidly, as if trying to process what she was seeing, as if hoping that the image before her was just a figment of her imagination. But it wasn't. Standing beside me, fingers lightly gripping my arm, was Lauren Hayes, the wife of my wife's lover. Emma's horror was mirrored only by the expression on the man beside her. Richard Hayes, her boss, her secret, her downfall. His jaw clenched, his body tensed, his eyes darted between me and Lauren, his lips parting. But no words came out. Lauren spoke first. "Surprised to see me, Richard?" Her voice was calm, almost amused. She looked stunning in a sleek black dress, her brown hair cascading over her shoulders, a picture of poise and quiet fury. But I knew better. Beneath her composed exterior was a storm, one that I had helped ignite. Emma took an unsteady step forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Danielle." I tilted my head slightly, watching her, my expression unreadable. "Oh, don't stop the party on our account," I said, my voice carrying through the room. "We wouldn't want to ruin such a special evening." A murmur rippled through the crowd, some guests shifting uncomfortably, others watching with barely concealed curiosity. They'd sensed something was off, something darker lurking beneath the surface of this grand corporate event. Emma's fingers trembled around the stem of her glass. "Daniel, what is this?" I let a slow smile creep onto my lips, though there was no humor behind it. "I think you know exactly what this is." Lauren turned to face her husband, her tone still deceptively sweet. "Tell me, Richard, when were you going to tell me? Or were you planning on keeping up the charade forever?" Richard swallowed hard. His gaze flickered to Emma, then back to me. He was trying to piece together what was happening, trying to salvage some shred of control over the situation. But there was nothing left to salvage. "You know," I said, taking a slow step forward, my voice quiet, almost intimate. "I'd always wondered, when you kissed him in that hotel lobby, did you think no one would see? When you laughed at his jokes over candlelit dinners, when you let him touch you the way only I was supposed to?" "Daniel," she interrupted, her voice a plea. I smirked. "Oh, Richard," I said, my voice soft, "you did this to yourself." For a moment, no one moved. The entire ballroom was holding its breath, caught in the gravity of the moment. Then, as if the weight of my words had finally settled, Emma's grip on her champagne flute faltered. The glass slipped from her fingers, shattered against the marble floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I leaned in just slightly, lowering my voice so that only she could hear me. "This is just the beginning." And then, without another word, I turned and walked away. The moment I stepped out of the ballroom, the cold night air hit me like a slap. I exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain from my shoulders, but my pulse was still hammering in my ears. Lauren walked beside me, her heels clicking against the marble floor of the hotel lobby. She hadn't said a word since we left the room full of stunned faces and broken illusions. Finally, she spoke. "That went well." I turned my head slightly, catching the ghost of a smile on her lips. "Depends on how you define well," I muttered, shoving my hands into my coat pockets. Lauren stopped walking, forcing me to turn and face her. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, studied me. "You enjoyed that," she said. "It wasn't a question." I held her gaze. "Didn't you?" She let out a soft chuckle, shaking her head. You're dangerous, Daniel. So are you. A beat of silence stretched between us, filled only by the distant hum of traffic outside. Then she sighed and rubbed her temples. Now what? I leaned against one of the lobby's massive stone pillars, considering her question. Now, I said, we let them squirm. Lauren's lips parted slightly, then curved into a slow, knowing smile. You want them to suffer. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled out my phone, scrolling through old messages, the ones that had set this entire plan in motion. Emma's late-night excuses, the suspicious meetings, the lies that had stacked so high they became impossible to ignore. I want them to understand, I said finally. Lauren nodded as if she understood exactly what I meant. And maybe she did. Back in my apartment, the city lights stretched endlessly beyond my window, their glow reflecting off the half-empty whiskey glass in my hand. I should have felt victorious. Instead, there was only a cold emptiness. A memory surfaced, Emma's expression when she realized the truth had finally caught up to her. Shock. Fear. Guilt. It should have satisfied me. Should have made me feel something other than this hollow ache in my chest. But it didn't. A sharp knock at my door pulled me from my thoughts. I set the glass down, running a hand through my hair before crossing the room. When I opened the door, I wasn't surprised to see her. Emma stood there, her eyes red-rimmed, her coat wrapped tightly around her as if it could shield her from what was coming. Daniel, she whispered. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. That was fast. Please, she said, voice trembling. Can we talk? I studied her for a moment, letting the silence stretch until I saw doubt flicker across her face. Then I stepped aside. Come in. And just like that, the next phase of the game began. Emma stepped inside, her heels clicking softly against the wooden floor. She hesitated near the entrance, as if unsure whether she was welcome. I let the silence settle between us, watching her shift uneasily under my gaze. Drink? I asked, moving toward the bar. She shook her head. No. I poured myself another glass of whiskey anyway, taking a slow sip before turning back to her. She looked exhausted, her makeup smudged, her hair slightly disheveled. A far cry from the polished, confident woman I used to know. Or maybe I had never really known her at all. You wanted to talk, I said, setting the glass down. So talk. Emma inhaled sharply, as if gathering the strength to speak. What you did tonight, it was cruel. I let out a short laugh. Cruel? Funny. I was thinking the same about what you did. She flinched, her fingers tightening around the strap of her purse. I never meant for it to happen this way. Ah, I nodded slowly. So it just happened. Like a car crash? Like gravity pulling you toward him? Her lips parted, but no words came out. She knew there was no excuse that would satisfy me. Daniel, How long? I cut her off. She swallowed. Does it matter? I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. How? Long. Emma's eyes flickered with something, shame maybe, or regret. 6 months. I exhaled through my nose, gripping the edge of the counter to steady myself. 6 months. Half a year of lies, half a year of pretending. Half a year of me being a fool. Why? I asked, my voice quieter now. Emma hesitated before answering. Because I was lonely. I let out a bitter chuckle. Lonely. She nodded, eyes glossy with unshed tears. You were always so distant. So consumed with your work, your plans, I felt like I didn't exist anymore. I clenched my jaw. So you found someone who made you feel seen? Her silence was answer enough. A sharp pain stabbed at my chest, but I masked it with indifference. Tell me, did he make you happy? Emma looked away. No. I scoffed. That makes 2 of us. She took a hesitant step closer. I never stopped loving you, Daniel. I shook my head, letting out a slow exhale. You don't betray the people you love. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I picked up my glass, took a slow sip, and looked her dead in the eyes. "Get out." Emma inhaled sharply, as if she had hoped for a different ending. But there was nothing left to say. Without another word, she turned and walked toward the door. The sound of it closing behind her echoed through the empty apartment. I stood there for a while, staring at the spot where she had just been. Then, with a sigh, I downed the rest of my whiskey and reached for my phone. I had won the game. So why did it feel like I had lost? The storm outside raged on, rain lashing against the windows in relentless sheets. Inside, the dim glow of the desk lamp cast long shadows across the room. Daniel sat in his chair, his fingers wrapped loosely around a glass of whiskey. His third that night, or maybe his fourth. The bitter taste barely registered anymore. He had thought that exposing the truth would bring him satisfaction, that revealing Emma's betrayal to the world would feel like justice. But now, sitting alone in this empty apartment, he realized something that chilled him to his core. Winning didn't always feel like victory. He glanced at the pile of letters on the table, apologies, explanations, pleas for closure. He hadn't opened a single one. What was there to say? The past couldn't be rewritten. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. He frowned. It was late. Too late for visitors. For a moment he considered ignoring it. But something inside him stirred, a quiet curiosity, an unease he couldn't quite place. Setting the glass down, he stood and walked toward the door. When he opened it, he wasn't sure if he was surprised or not. Emma. She stood there, soaked from the rain, her coat clinging to her frame. Her eyes searched his face, her expression unreadable. "Daniel," she said softly. He didn't respond. She hesitated before speaking again. "Can I come in?" He studied her for a long moment before stepping aside. She walked past him, leaving a trail of water in her wake. He closed the door, sealing them off from the storm outside. Neither of them spoke. Finally, Emma let out a breath. "I'm leaving." Daniel stiffened. "Leaving?" She nodded, brushing damp strands of hair from her face. "The city. The job. Everything." He swallowed. "Running away, then?" A sad smile tugged at her lips. "Maybe. Or maybe I just need to start over somewhere new." Silence stretched between them. Emma glanced around the apartment, the familiar space where they had once built a life together. "I didn't come to ask for forgiveness," she said. "I know I don't deserve it. I needed you to know that I never wanted to hurt you." Daniel exhaled slowly. "And yet you did." She flinched but nodded. "I know." More silence. Finally, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I wrote this a while ago. I wasn't sure if I'd ever give it to you, but..." She set it down on the table. "Maybe it's better this way." Daniel didn't touch it. Emma lingered for a moment, as if waiting for him to say something, anything. But when the words didn't come, she nodded to herself and turned toward the door. As her hand touched the doorknob, she hesitated. "Goodbye, Daniel." He swallowed hard. "Goodbye, Emma." And then she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving Daniel alone once again. For a long time, he just stood there, staring at the envelope on the table. Then, with a deep breath, he reached for it. The ocean stretched endlessly before him, the waves rolling in steady, rhythmic crashes against the shore. The salty breeze ruffled his hair as he stood on the edge of the cliff, the letter in his hand. Emma's words had been simple, honest, a farewell, not just to him, but to the life they had once shared. She had made her choice. And now it was his turn. Daniel exhaled, letting the wind carry away the last of his bitterness. Maybe some stories didn't have neat endings. Maybe some wounds never fully healed. But as he watched the sun dip below the horizon, he realized that for the first time in a long while, he was ready to move forward. He let the letter slip from his fingers. The wind carried it away. And Daniel walked away, leaving the past behind.